The fork slipped from her trembling hand as her son's voice cut through the quiet, sharp, cracking, and final. "I'm tired of you and your voice." The words shattered 3 years of silence she'd been pretending didn't exist. The clock above the stove ticked with an unsteady rhythm, its sound louder than it should have been in a kitchen meant for laughter. Laura wiped her hands on a dish towel, watching the spaghetti noodles boil over, foaming like they were trying to escape. Another long day at the diner had left her wrists sore and her mind dull, but she still set the table. 2 plates, 2 forks, 2 folded napkins. Habit. Oh, maybe both. From upstairs, faint bass lines pulsed through the ceiling. Ethan's music again, that low, wordless hum that filled every silence he refused to break with her. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing through the ache in her chest. Hey there, my dear family and friends. If you're already tuned in and ready to enjoy this story, hit that subscribe button, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, because tomorrow I'll be bringing you another story just as captivating, and you definitely don't want to miss it. Now back to the story. "Dinner's ready," she called, voice cracking halfway through. No response. She tried again, louder, forcing brightness into her tone. "Ethan, come on, it's getting cold." Beep. Then heavy footsteps on the stairs. He appeared in the doorway, tall, shoulders hunched beneath a gray hoodie, eyes hidden behind hair that hadn't been cut in weeks. 16 looked heavier on him than it should have. Laura smiled carefully. "Hey, I made your favorite." "Spaghetti again," he muttered, sliding into his chair. "You always make spaghetti." She winced but didn't argue. "It's easy after work." He shrugged, twisting noodles around his fork without eating them. The steam rose between them like a thin wall. The house used to hum with chatter, her late husband's jokes, Ethan's laughter spilling across the table. Now, every meal felt like trespassing in a memory. Laura tried again. "How was school?" "Fine." "Did you talk to Mr. Reynolds about the science project?" "Yeah." "How'd that go?" He lifted his eyes just long enough to meet hers. "Fine." The word echoed like a slammed door. Laura forced a smile, but her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her glass. The truth she'd been avoiding gnawed at her. Her son wasn't just distant. He was slipping away. And she didn't know how to call him back. Later that evening, while Ethan washed his plate, barely, she lingered by the sink pretending to wipe the counter. The kitchen light flickered above them, stuttering like it didn't know whether to stay or give up. "You know," she began softly, "when your dad was your age." "Mom," he cut in, his voice sharp. "Can we not do this again?" Her throat tightened. "Do what?" "The whole dad would have thing. You always. Just stop, okay?" He turned away, drying his hands on his hoodie. Laura froze. Her first instinct was to correct him, to demand respect, to remind him who she was. But the sight of his trembling shoulders stopped her. He wasn't angry. He was hurting. She took a breath. "I just miss how we used to talk." Ethan exhaled slowly, still not facing her. "You mean how you used to talk?" The air thickened. Every word she tried to speak felt heavy with things unsaid. "I miss your laugh. Miss him. Miss us." But instead she just nodded. "Okay. I'll be quiet then." He left the kitchen without another word. When the front door to his room clicked shut, the silence that followed was almost tender. Laura sat at the table, looking at the untouched second plate. The spaghetti was cold now, congealed into a sad shape. She picked up her fork anyway, twirling it as if pretending to eat would make the scene less empty. Across from her sat his empty chair, and behind it, on the wall, the family photograph she hadn't had the heart to move. Her husband's smile was frozen mid-laugh. Ethan was only 10 in the picture, grinning, hands resting on his father's shoulders. She remembered that day. Beach. The sunlight. The sound of both their voices blending in her memory. Now the only sound was the clock. Upstairs, Ethan lay on his bed, headphones half on, eyes staring at the ceiling. His room smelled faintly of detergent and dust. He'd meant what he said. He was tired of her voice. But not for the reason she thought. It wasn't the nagging. It was the pain behind it. The way every word she spoke sounded like it was fighting not to break. He remembered the night of the accident. How his dad's voice had been calm while he screamed for help. How his mom's voice had been silent when the doctor came in with bad news. And ever since then, that silence had scared him more than anything. So he filled it with music, sarcasm, anything that wasn't talking. He turned onto his side, clenching his jaw. He loved her, but every time she spoke, it reminded him of everything they'd lost. Downstairs, Laura whispered to the empty air, "I don't know how to reach you anymore." Her voice cracked. "I don't even know if you want me to try." She reached for the photo again, her thumb brushing over her late husband's face. "You'd know what to say," she murmured. "You always did." The hum of the refrigerator filled the space where his laughter used to be. Have you ever lived under the same roof with someone and still felt miles apart? Tell us below, what's harder? The silence that comes after a fight, or the silence that comes from never talking at all? The next evening began like any other, too quiet for a home that used to be full of laughter. Laura reheated the leftover spaghetti. She thought about making something new, but after a 10-hour shift, she didn't have it in her. Her apron still smelled faintly of coffee and grease, reminders of customers who smiled politely while she forced cheer she didn't feel. She set the table again. 2 plates, 2 glasses of water, a candle she didn't light. Then she called out softly, "Ethan, dinner." No answer. She called again, louder this time. "Ethan, please don't make me call you twice." Upstairs, Ethan rolled his eyes, yanked out an earbud, and stomped down the steps. The thud of his sneakers on wood was enough to make her heart beat faster. It wasn't fear, it was anticipation. Every evening lately felt like a gamble. Would tonight be normal, or would something finally break? He slouched into his chair, hoodie up, arms crossed. "Smells the same," he said, poking his fork into the plate. "You ever cook anything else?" Laura ignored the jab. "You could cook once in a while." "I do. When you're not home." She blinked at him. "You shouldn't be using the stove alone." "See? That's what I mean," he cut in, voice rising a little. "You treat me like I'm 5. She sighed. "Ethan, I'm just..." "Just what?" "Being careful. Being protective." "Yeah, I know." He twirled his fork without eating. "You say that every time." Something inside her twitched, the same ache that had been building for months. "I don't say it because I like repeating myself," she said, tone sharper than she meant. "I say it because I worry about you. You hardly talk anymore. You stay in your room, barely eat, your grades." He groaned. "Here we go again." "Don't interrupt me," she said automatically. "Then stop giving me speeches." Her voice faltered. "I'm trying to have a conversation, Ethan." "No, you're not," he shot back, slamming his fork down. "You're lecturing me again." The clatter of metal against porcelain echoed like thunder. Laura froze, staring at him. The air between them trembled. "I'm sorry," she began softly. "I didn't mean to." He stood suddenly, the chair scraping against the tile. "You always mean to, Mom. You always mean to talk, to explain, to fix everything with words. Because that's all I have left," she cried. Her voice cracked like something splitting in half. "Your father is gone, and you barely look at me anymore. What else am I supposed to do, Ethan? Stay silent and watch you disappear." Her words landed hard. But instead of softening, he clenched his fists, eyes wet and wild. "I'm tired of you and your voice." The scream ripped through the room, raw and jagged, breaking through every fragile piece they'd been faking. It wasn't the volume that stunned her. It was the honesty. He was shaking. "You talk and talk and talk, but you never listen. You don't even see me anymore." Laura's lips parted, but no sound came. For a heartbeat, she wasn't in the kitchen. She was back in that hospital room 3 years ago when the doctor said, "I'm sorry," and her world went still. Ethan had been sitting beside her then, smaller, silent, staring at the floor. She hadn't stopped talking since that day. because silence meant losing control, and losing control meant remembering. Now, staring at her son's furious face, she saw it. He wasn't angry at her voice. He was angry at what it carried. All the years of pretending they were okay. All the things she said to fill the space where his father's voice used to be. Ethan turned away, breath ragged. You just don't get it. You never have. Laura swallowed hard. Then help me understand. He laughed bitterly. What's the point? You'll just tell me how I should feel. She stepped forward, trembling. No, not this time. But he was already walking away. You don't know how to be quiet, Mom. When the door to his room slammed upstairs, it shook the picture frames on the wall. One of them, a family photo from before the accident, fell face down on the floor. Laura bent to pick it up, but the glass had cracked clean through the middle, splitting her husband's face from Ethan's. Her breath caught. For a long time, she just stared at it, the sound of her own heartbeat filling her ears. Then, quietly, she sat down at the table again. The fork he'd thrown was still there, a smear of sauce across the tile. She reached for it with shaking hands, her reflection warping in the metal. She tried to whisper something, an apology, a prayer, but her voice failed. For once, there were no words left to say. Upstairs, Ethan lay on his bed, face buried in his pillow. He didn't know why the words came out like that. He hadn't meant to say he was tired of her. He was tired of feeling helpless. Tired of pretending the empty chair at the table didn't matter. But he couldn't tell her that. Because she'd only cry. And he hated seeing her cry almost as much as he hated causing it. He pulled the blanket over his head, trying to block out the sound of her voice that wasn't coming anymore. The silence scared him more than her words ever did. Downstairs, Laura whispered to the quiet room. I'm sorry. Her voice barely reached the walls. She stared at the cracked photo, the line through it like a scar that wouldn't heal. And somewhere inside her something shifted. Fear, grief, maybe even hope, she couldn't tell. But she knew one thing, she couldn't lose him too. When anger finally bursts out after being buried for years, do you think it destroys or heals? Share your thoughts below. Can love survive words that cut this deep? The next 3 days passed like fog. No shouting. No apologies. Just silence. Laura woke early for her diner shifts, moving around the house like a ghost. She packed Ethan's lunch, left it on the counter, and left before he came downstairs. He took it without a word, stuffing it into his backpack before heading out to school. Their schedules were synchronized by avoidance. Proof that two people could share a home and never truly meet. At work, Laura kept busy. The diner's hum was comforting. The hiss of the coffee machine, the chatter of customers who didn't know her story. Every smile she gave was a disguise, every joke rehearsed. But when she wiped down the counter, she could still hear his voice echoing in her mind. I'm tired of you and your voice. The words haunted her like a melody she couldn't stop humming. That night, she returned home to darkness. Ethan's door was closed, music leaking through like a wall she couldn't break. She knocked once. Dinner's in the fridge. No answer. Her voice sounded small, even to her own ears. She used to sing while she cooked, sometimes humming the songs her husband loved. But lately, even the thought of music felt wrong. She sat down at the table with her own plate, trying to eat in the silence. Each bite tasted like memory. Her eyes drifted to the photograph she'd glued back together that morning. The crack across it was still visible, running between her husband and Ethan, leaving her in the middle like a bridge trying to hold both sides together. She whispered, I'm still trying. Upstairs, Ethan scrolled through his phone, not really seeing anything. His chest still burned when he thought about that night. He hadn't meant to yell, not like that. But the moment had swallowed him whole, every word he'd buried for 3 years rushing out in one uncontrollable wave. And now he didn't know how to take it back. His best friend Mason had noticed his mood at school. Everything okay, man? Ethan shrugged. Yeah, just tired. Mason raised a brow. You sure? You've been quiet lately. Ethan forced a laugh. You're one to talk. Seriously, Mason said. If it's about your mom, drop it. Ethan turned away before the conversation could dig deeper. Mason didn't understand. Nobody did. It wasn't that he hated his mom. He hated that every word between them carried grief, like neither of them could breathe without choking on the past. That night, Laura sat on the couch watching the news she wasn't listening to. Her phone buzzed. It was her sister Anna. Hey, how's my favorite sister? Anna's voice was light but cautious. She already knew something was wrong. Laura forced a laugh. Exhausted. That's all. And how's Ethan? Laura hesitated. He's a teenager. Translation, something happened. Laura's eyes filled with tears before she could stop them. He yelled at me, Anna. Said he's tired of me. Tired of my voice. There was a long silence on the other end. Then softly Anna said, Kids say things, Laura. You can't take it personally. But he meant it, she whispered. I saw it in his face. I don't know how to talk to him anymore. Then maybe stop trying to talk, Anna said gently. Just be there. Laura blinked. Be there how? Sometimes the best thing you can say to someone is nothing at all. Laura hung up feeling more confused than comforted. She wasn't built for silence. Silence was where grief lived. Later she walked to Ethan's door. For a long time she stood there, listening to the muffled rhythm of his music. Her hand hovered over the doorknob. She imagined walking in, sitting on the edge of his bed, saying I'm sorry. But what if he turned away again? What if he didn't care? So instead she whispered, Good night, knowing he wouldn't hear. Her words dissolved into the hum of the music, like raindrops vanishing into the ocean. Ethan turned down his volume after midnight. Through the thin wall, he heard the faint sound of his mom crying. It wasn't loud, just soft, rhythmic. He buried his face in his pillow, trying to block it out. But the harder he tried, the louder it felt. He wanted to get up, knock on her door, say something, anything. But pride pinned him down. He hated himself for it. Still he did nothing. Days passed. The distance grew heavier. Laura started leaving sticky notes instead of speaking. Lunch in fridge. Good luck on test. Working late, dinner on stove. Ethan kept them all. Not out of sentiment, but because he couldn't throw them away. Each one was a piece of her voice he didn't know how to answer. By the end of the week, the silence had become unbearable. Laura sat on the porch steps after work, sipping coffee gone cold, staring at the sky turning orange. She thought about how her husband used to sit beside her at this hour, tapping her knee to a rhythm only he knew. When he died, she promised herself she'd keep Ethan safe. She just didn't realize safety could feel so much like prison. A breeze rustled the wind chimes above her. The sound reminded her of Ethan's baby laugh, a sound she hadn't heard in years. Her eyes stung. What happened to us? She whispered. Inside, Ethan sat at his desk, fingers tracing the edge of a photo he'd found in a drawer. A picture of him and his dad fishing, sunlight bouncing off the water. His mom had taken that picture. He could almost hear her laugh in the background. He turned it over and saw her handwriting. My two favorite voices in the world. He swallowed hard. He wasn't really tired of her voice. He was tired of the pain it carried. But he didn't know how to tell her that without breaking apart again. So he put the photo away, turned off his lamp, and let the darkness swallow the words he couldn't say. When someone you love shuts you out, what do? Give them space or fight to stay close? Comment below. Which one hurts more, being ignored or being misunderstood? The sky broke open that Friday evening. Rain came down in sheets, slamming against the windows with a rhythm too angry to ignore. The power flickered once, twice, then went out completely. Laura froze in the kitchen, dish towel in hand, staring at the sudden darkness. Great, she muttered. Just what I needed. She felt her way to the drawer, found the old box of matches, and lit the tall candle sitting in the center of the table. The flame jumped to life, casting long, shaky shadows across the walls. Thunder rolled overhead. Somewhere upstairs a door opened. Ethan's footsteps creaked down the hall. What happened? The storm knocked the power, she said. Her voice was soft, cautious. Everything's out. He hovered in the doorway, phone flashlight glowing faintly. Wi-Fi's down too, he muttered. Laura managed a small, almost teasing smile. Tragic. He didn't laugh. But he didn't leave either. That somehow felt like progress. She found a few cans in the pantry. Soup, beans, a box of crackers. The kind of survival food no one wanted but everyone ended up eating when life fell apart. Can you grab another candle from the living room? She asked. Ethan hesitated, then disappeared briefly. When he came back, he set a stubby candle beside hers, flame flickering between them like a nervous heartbeat. Thanks, she said quietly. Whatever. She poured the soup into a pot, lit the gas stove with a match, and watched the small blue flame hiss to life. The sound of it filled the silence. Do you think it'll last all night? He asked, sitting down at the table. Maybe. Depends how bad the wind gets. Figures. He sighed. I was gonna play with Mason online. Guess you'll have to play with me instead, she said before she could stop herself. He glanced up, a flicker of surprise in his eyes, then smirked slightly. I don't think you play video games, Mom. True, she said, stirring the soup. But I can still win at conversation. He gave a soft snort, shaking his head. It wasn't quite laughter, but it was close enough to make her chest ache with something warm and painful. When she placed the bowls on the table, the candlelight danced across his face. For the first time in months, she noticed how much he looked like his father. Same jawline, same eyes that hid too much. He caught her staring. What? Nothing, she said quickly. Just, you've grown. He rolled his eyes. Yeah, that happens. She smiled faintly, then looked down at her bowl. I know I talk too much sometimes. He didn't answer. It's just, her voice faltered. I don't always know what else to do. Ethan poked at his soup. The candlelight trembled between them, filling the pauses with gold. Do you ever think, she whispered, that maybe we both talk too little and too much, just at the wrong times? He stared at her, confused. What's that supposed to mean? It means, she said slowly, I think we're both scared of silence, but for different reasons. Thunder cracked overhead. The candle flickered violently. Instinctively, Ethan reached out to steady it, his hand brushing hers. They both froze. The touch lasted less than a second, but it was enough to pull something loose inside both of them. She didn't move her hand right away. Neither did he. Then softly she said, You used to hold my hand when it thundered. He swallowed. I was a kid. You were brave, she said with a faint smile. Braver than me. His lips twitched like he almost wanted to smile back, but the moment passed. He pulled his hand away and leaned back in his chair. Still the warmth lingered. They, quietly. The sound of rain filled the silence. Every so often the wind howled, shaking the windows. Laura watched him as he ate, every motion unfamiliar and familiar all at once. He wasn't her little boy anymore, but he was still hers. After dinner, they sat in the flickering light, both pretending not to know what to say. Finally, Ethan asked, You ever think about Dad during storms? The question hit her like a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. All the time, she admitted. He loved storms. Said they made him feel alive. Yeah, Ethan said quietly. He used to let me stay up to watch lightning. You hated that. I didn't hate it, she said, her voice trembling. I was scared. He looked at her for a long moment. You're always scared. The words weren't cruel, just honest. She nodded. You're right. That surprised him. Wait, you're agreeing. Yeah, she said. I've been scared since the night we lost him. Scared of losing you too. Ethan stared down at his hands. His throat worked like he was trying to say something but couldn't find the words. Finally he whispered, You won't. It was almost lost beneath the thunder. But she heard it. And for the first time in years, she let herself believe it. The power stayed out, so they stayed up, talking in fragments, safe topics, memories, even a joke or two. At one point, Laura laughed softly. Ethan blinked at her, startled. "You still laugh?" She chuckled, shaking her head. "Not often enough." The candle burned lower. The storm softened outside, but inside something was starting to heal. When they finally decided to sleep, Laura handed him a blanket from the couch. "You can stay down here if you want," she said. "Just in case the power doesn't come back." He hesitated, then nodded. "Okay." He stretched out on the couch while she sat in the armchair nearby. The candlelight flickered, shadows moving across the walls like ghosts leaving the room. For a while they said nothing. Then Ethan's voice, half asleep. "Mom." "Yeah. Your voice isn't that bad." She turned her head toward him, tears pricking at her eyes. "Thanks, sweetheart." "Don't make it weird," he murmured, already drifting off. She smiled into the dark. Too late. The next morning dawned gray and damp, the sky still heavy from the night's storm. The power flickered back to life just as Laura poured water into the coffee maker. The soft hum of electricity felt strange after so much silence. Ethan was still asleep on the couch, blanket tangled around him, one arm dangling off the side. For the first time in years, his face looked peaceful, boyish even. She stood there for a moment just watching. Something inside her ached. "I've missed this version of you," she thought. "The one who used to laugh at everything and believe I could fix anything." While tidying up, she found the candle burned nearly to the base, wax hardened into a pale puddle on the table. Next to it sat one of Ethan's notebooks. She picked it up absent-mindedly, meaning to set it aside, but then a folded envelope slipped out. Her breath caught. Her name was written across it. The handwriting wasn't Ethan's. It was her husband's. She sat down, heart racing, as if she were about to open a door she'd boarded shut years ago. When she unfolded the paper, the ink was slightly smudged from old tears. "Laura, if you're reading this, it means you've found the box I told you to keep safe. Don't throw these away. I know life's messy, but writing helps me make sense of things. Even when you can't say them out loud, words matter. Keep speaking even when it hurts. Love always, Mark." Her fingers trembled. The letter wasn't new. She remembered writing replies she never sent. After he died, she couldn't bear to throw them out. She glanced toward the hallway, then moved quietly to her bedroom. Under her bed was the old shoebox, blue, with a fading ribbon tied around it. She opened it and there they were. Her unsent letters to him, dozens of them. Some neatly folded. Some crumpled and tear-stained. She'd written them after the accident, pouring every ache onto paper. She'd written about her fear of raising Ethan alone, her guilt for surviving, her exhaustion from pretending she was fine. She thought no one had ever read them. Till now. Because when she looked closely, one envelope was missing. "Mom!" He jumped. Ethan stood at the doorway, sleepy but alert, holding the missing letter in his hand. He looked at her, really looked at her, and his expression was a mix of confusion and hurt. "I found this last night when the power was out. I was looking for matches in the drawer, and it just fell out." Laura's throat closed. "You read it?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah." Silence stretched between them, heavy as rain-soaked air. She wanted to be angry. She wanted to tell him he had no right. But when she saw the pain in his eyes, the anger melted before it could form. "What did you think?" she whispered. He hesitated. "I didn't know you were that sad." Her voice cracked. "I didn't want you to." Ethan's eyes dropped to the floor. "You said you hated the sound of the rain because it reminded you of the crash." Laura inhaled sharply. "That letter was from the first anniversary." "I remember that night," he said softly. "You were in the kitchen crying. I thought you were mad at me." "Mad at you?" she repeated, stunned. "Ethan, I've never been mad at you." He shook his head. "But I was the one who wanted Dad to pick me up early from practice. If I hadn't..." She crossed the room before he could finish. "No," she said firmly, placing her hands on his shoulders. "Don't you dare finish that sentence." Tears blurred his vision. "If I hadn't, he'd still be here." Laura's voice trembled, but her words were steady. "He'd still have driven. You didn't cause the rain. You didn't cause the accident." He tried to turn away, but she held his face between her palms. "Listen to me, baby. It wasn't your fault. It was no one's fault." Her own tears finally fell, warm and unrestrained. "I was the one who broke, Ethan. I tried so hard to stay strong that I stopped being real. I thought if I kept talking, I could fill the space he left behind." Ethan's lip quivered. "And I thought if I stayed quiet, I could make it stop hurting." The truth hit them both at once. His silence and her words were just two ways of grieving the same man. They sat together on the edge of the bed, neither speaking for a while. The air felt cleaner somehow, like the storm had passed through them too. Finally Ethan asked, "Why didn't you send them?" "Because I didn't think anyone would want to hear what I had to say," she admitted. "I thought being strong meant pretending I wasn't hurting." He stared at the box of letters, eyes glistening. "Can I read them?" She hesitated, then nodded. "If you want to." He opened one carefully, scanning her messy handwriting. Tears welled in his eyes as he read aloud a line from one letter. "I keep talking to fill the silence. But maybe it's time I learned to listen to it instead." He looked up at her. "You wrote this years ago. I guess I just wasn't ready to mean it," she said softly. "It began with a letter. Not one of Mark's, but something new. Something Laura had written the night before and left half-finished on the table. When Ethan came home from school, he noticed it sitting by the candle. He wasn't trying to snoop. He just recognized his father's name at the top. Curiosity got the better of him. He unfolded it and read, "Mark, Ethan's doing better. I think he's finally letting me in again. Sometimes I wonder if he only needs me because you're gone. I don't know if he'll ever forgive me for that night, or if I'll ever forgive myself." Ethan froze. The words burned. "Only needs me because you're gone. Never forgive me for that night." He didn't read further. He didn't notice the second half of the letter, where she'd written about how proud she was of him, about how his laughter was saving her piece by piece. He stopped at the hurt. And in stopping there, the old wound reopened. When Laura got home later that evening, she found the house dark again, not from the storm this time, but from the quiet. Ethan's door was closed. She knocked gently. "Hey, dinner's ready." No answer. "Ethan." Still nothing. Her stomach tightened. Finally she pushed the door open a crack. He was sitting at his desk, back to her, earbuds in. But the letter, the half-written one, was lying torn in half on the floor beside him. Her breath caught. "You read it." He didn't turn around. "Yeah. Ethan, Don't," he said sharply. "Just don't." She stepped inside slowly. "That letter wasn't finished. You didn't read." "I read enough." His voice trembled, not with anger this time but something worse. Betrayal. Laura's heart pounded. "Honey, you don't understand." "Stop calling me that," he snapped, spinning around in his chair. His eyes were wet but hard. "You said you didn't know if I'd ever forgive you." "For what?" "For being my mom." Tears rose in her eyes. "No, for loving Dad more than me." Her mouth fell open. "Ethan, that's not true." "Then why'd you write that I only need you because he's gone?" Laura took a shaky breath, trying to steady her voice. "Because it's something I feel, not something that's true. I was trying to make sense of it." "Well, you did a great job," he said bitterly, grabbing his backpack. "You made perfect sense." He moved toward the door. "Ethan, please." He turned, eyes blazing. "You say I don't talk enough, but maybe you just don't like what you'd hear if I did." The words hit like a slap. And then he was gone, out the front door before she could follow, the sound of it slamming echoing through the house like thunder all over again. Laura stood frozen in the hallway, shaking. The old fear rushed back, thick and familiar. I lost him again. Her knees gave out. She sank to the floor, clutching the torn halves of her letter, sobbing into her hands. For hours she sat there. Every minute stretched into an ache. When she finally looked up, the candle on the table had gone out again. Ethan didn't go far. He walked aimlessly through the rain-soaked streets, hoodie pulled tight, hands jammed in his pockets. He wasn't even sure where he was headed, just that he needed space, air, anything that wasn't her voice echoing in his head. Her words replayed over and over. Only needs me because you're gone. Never forgive me for that night. He kicked a stone down the sidewalk, hard enough to hurt. He wasn't really mad at her. Not completely. He was mad that she'd said the thing he feared most, that maybe he wasn't enough. After his dad died, he'd watched her fade. He'd watched her smile turn into something painted on, her laughter into static. He'd wanted to fix it, to make her proud again. And now he felt like nothing he'd done had ever mattered. Hours passed. When he finally returned home, the house was dark except for the faint glow of the living room lamp. Laura was sitting there, still in her work clothes, clutching the torn letter. He hesitated at the doorway, drenched, guilt flickering in his chest. She looked up when she heard him. Her face was pale, eyes red. "Ethan," she whispered. He didn't move. She stood, her voice trembling. "You didn't read the rest." He looked away. "Doesn't matter." "It does," she said softly, taking a step closer. "Because it's the part where I wrote that you're the reason I'm still here. That every day I wake up, it's because you exist." His throat tightened. She placed the torn letter on the table, smoothing it with shaking hands. "I shouldn't have written that where you could find it. But sweetheart, you have to understand. I write what I can't say out loud. That's how I survive." He swallowed hard. "You could have told me." "I didn't know how," she whispered. "I thought I'd already lost the right to." He stared at her for a long time, then turned away, his voice raw. "I need time." She nodded slowly. "I know." And just like that, he went upstairs, leaving her in the half-light again. Laura sank into the couch, exhausted. For the first time since the accident, she didn't try to fill the silence. She just sat in it, letting it hurt. She realized then that healing wasn't a straight line. It was circles, grief and forgiveness chasing each other again and again. Upstairs, Ethan lay awake, the rain tapping softly on his window. He looked at the photo of his parents on his desk, the one from years ago, cracked down the middle. He picked it up, tracing the line that split them apart. Then, slowly, he reached for the glue she'd used months before and pressed the pieces together. It wasn't perfect, but neither were they. And maybe that was okay. Night had fallen heavy and still. The storm outside had thinned to a mist, leaving faint trails of water sliding down the windows. But inside the house, the real storm hadn't quite passed. Ethan was in his room again, the torn photo now glued back together sitting on his desk. Beside it, the candle from downstairs, unlit, its wax streaked with the fingerprints from that night weeks ago. He couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face when he yelled. He saw the way her shoulders collapsed, as if she had been hit. Downstairs, Laura sat on the couch in the dim light, an old blanket around her shoulders, her mind turning over the same sentence again and again. "You could have told me." It wasn't anger she felt anymore. It was grief, for all the moments they'd both wasted pretending not to care, just to protect themselves. She stared at the family photo on the shelf, the one taken before the accident, before everything broke. Her fingers brushed across the glass. "Mark," she whispered to the empty room, "what would you have said to him? To us?" The silence didn't answer, but somehow she heard the echo of her husband's old advice anyway. You can't fix what you won't face. Upstairs, Ethan rolled over and stared at the ceiling. He wanted to say sorry. He just didn't know how. Pride was easier, anger was armor. But underneath it, all he wanted was for her to know that he didn't hate her voice. He hated what it reminded him of. The day it cracked while she screamed his father's name. The day everything changed. He sat up suddenly, breath uneven. Maybe it was time to stop running from that memory. He padded down the stairs, barefoot, pausing when he saw her on the couch. She looked smaller somehow, fragile in the half-light, clutching one of his dad's old sweatshirts. For a second he almost turned around. But then she looked up. "Hey," he said quietly. Her voice was rough from crying. "Hey." He swallowed. "Can I sit?" She nodded, pulling the blanket aside. He sat down, leaving a small space between them. The silence stretched out, not angry this time, just hesitant, scared of breaking. Finally he said, "I didn't mean it. That night at dinner." She blinked. "What?" "When I said I was tired of you and your voice." His eyes stayed on the floor. "I didn't mean it. I was just mad. At everything. At Dad for leaving. At you for trying too hard to make it all okay." She swallowed hard, tears already gathering. "You don't have to explain, Ethan." "I think I do." His voice cracked. "Because I keep acting like I don't care, but I do. I just didn't know how to tell you that without falling apart." Her hand trembled where it rested on her lap. "You can fall apart, sweetheart. You don't have to hold it all together for me." He looked up then, eyes red. "But who's going to hold it together for you?" That question broke something open in both of them. Laura exhaled shakily, her voice barely a whisper. "I thought I had to be the strong one. I thought if I didn't keep talking, I'd disappear into the quiet." He nodded slowly. "I get that now." She smiled through tears. "Your dad used to say my voice could wake the dead. Guess that wasn't far off." A small laugh escaped him, rough but real. They sat there for a long time, letting the silence turn soft instead of sharp. Then, finally, Laura reached out and placed the taped-together letter on the coffee table between them. "Do you want to read the rest?" she asked gently. He hesitated, then nodded. She passed it to him. He smoothed it out carefully, eyes scanning the words he hadn't seen before. "But even if he never forgives me, I will keep trying. Because I see his father in the way he fights to stay standing. And I see myself in the way he hides when he hurts. He is everything good that came from us. And I love him. Even in silence, I love him." His hands trembled. When he finally looked up, there were tears on his face. "You really wrote that?" She nodded. "Every word." He nodded back, jaw tight, trying to swallow the ache. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet." Her eyes softened. "That's okay. I'm not asking you to. I just want us to start trying again." He nodded again. "Yeah, me too." The clock ticked quietly. A gust of wind brushed the windows. Laura leaned back, a small, sad smile touching her lips. "Do you remember when you used to make up songs at the dinner table?" Ethan laughed quietly. "Yeah. I was terrible." "You were adorable," she said. "Your dad used to say it was the best noise he'd ever heard." He looked at her, smile fading into something gentler. "You really miss him, huh?" She nodded. "Every day. But I think we've both been missing each other too." He didn't answer, but the silence between them said enough. After a while he stood. "I'm going to bed," he said softly. "Thanks for talking." She smiled. "Always." He started toward the stairs, then paused halfway up and turned back. "Mom." "Yeah. I don't hate your voice." Her breath hitched. He gave a half smile. "Guess I just forgot what it sounded like when it wasn't angry." Then he went upstairs, leaving her with tears streaming freely down her face. Not from pain this time, but from relief. Later that night, Laura lit the candle again, the one that had survived storms, tears, and silence. She placed it on the kitchen table and whispered into the flame. "Thank you, Mark. We're going to be okay." The flame flickered as if answering. Upstairs, Ethan lay in bed, staring at the photo he had glued back together. It wasn't perfect. A faint crack still ran between his parents' faces. But it was whole again, like them. He smiled and whispered, "We're gonna be okay, Dad." Have you ever been caught between pride and love, knowing one word could fix everything but being too scared to say it? Share your story in the comments. You never know who might need to hear it.
Thank you for staying with us until the very end of this video, and I'm confident you enjoyed it. We've got plenty more exciting and heartwarming stories waiting for you. Just click on the image on your screen to watch the next one.